My name is Marisa Peer, and I created RTT, Rapid Transformational Therapy, and I'm passionate about making therapy accessible and much more simple for everybody, and also getting into the school system for children so they don't need therapy when they grow up. And I'm delighted to be here on Voices of the Future.
We are genuinely privileged and honored, actually, to have Marisa here talking to us. Marisa is a force to be reckoned with. We see her on stage. She's a phenomena on YouTube. But more importantly, she's saving people's lives. She's basically moving the needle and fundamentally changing and giving people hope and opportunity. That is how I see her. And today we're going to be talking to her about the future of health, the future of our thinking, the future of children. We'll talk about how and what sort of limitations and blockages that we may have within ourselves, which slows us down in terms of fulfilling our true potential. Marisa, welcome. Lovely to see you. I hope I did justice to that little intro.
You did. You certainly did.
Thank you. Marisa, as you can see, I'm a big fan, and I'm absolutely delighted and genuinely privileged to have you. So thank you again. Marisa, in typical Hollywood, Bollywood fashion, let's do a little flashback. Let's go back to little Marisa. When you were a little girl, were you naughty? Were you running around and chasing butterflies? Were you studious? And was there anybody when you were young that sort of helped to shape you to what you became today, or what you've become today?
Yes, my grandmother. I think without her I would have been a delinquent, but my grandmother was an amazing person. She also taught me something, that in life, if you have one person who believes in you, you'll always be okay. I think that's partly why I became a therapist, because I wanted to be that one person. And I've trained 17,000 therapists all over the world, and I always say to them, look, be that one person. In the Talmud and in the Quran, in the Torah and in the Quran, it says, if you change the life of one person, it's the same as changing the life of the whole world. So my grandmother definitely shaped my life, influenced my life, and imprinted my life, because she believed in me, and many times she was the only person who did. But you only need one person, so she was such a huge impact on my life.
That's deeply insightful. Thank you for that. Were you curious when you were young? Were you going around learning? Just sort of share with us your early story of how you evolved, because every person that I have spoken to has come up with interesting ideas of the 100 voices that we have in terms of how they evolved. So I just wanted to understand your story.
So my childhood, from the outside it looked perfect. We literally lived in a house with a white picket fence in Cambridge, which was beautiful. My father was an incredibly eminent head teacher. Everybody worshipped him, and he deserved that because he was really passionate about educating children. But like most people, he was out there. He wasn't really at home. My mother was very beautiful, very, very unfulfilled. And my parents are very unhappily married. So that, of course, had an impact. I grew up not really believing in relationships at all. And I was really influenced by my father, who went to work and had a great job. And my father was so fulfilled. Actually, when he was dying, he said, "We've had a wonderful life. I've had the most amazing life." He always felt he had the best job in the world because he made a difference.
Yes.
He made a difference. He helped, he influenced people. And so I always looked at my father and thought, that's it, you have to have a great job, because when your relationships go wrong, that will take away the pain. That's what I noticed. My mother was always in pain. My father seemed to be in no pain at all, because it's a job that gave him growth, meaning, significance, connection, certainty, diversity. And I always looked at those 9 things, that, I've got to have a job and it's got to give me those same things: purpose, meaning, connection, significance, growth, certainty, make a difference. And that's why I became a therapist. But I saw the difference my father made to children. I remember years ago when I was at home, this little boy came to my house. He said to me, "Is your dad Jesus?" Because my dad had just found him a bike. He worked at school, kids were always leaving bikes, and he'd kind of reconditioned this bike. And at his funeral, I told that story of this child coming to get the bike and saying to me, "Is your dad Jesus?" He really thought he was, because he wheeled out this bike. So my father always championed the underdog. Really believed that every child should have, imagine they have something on their head saying, "Please make me feel interested." A lot of gypsies would come to my father's school because he would get everybody involved, and he believed that every child should feel significant. And of course I created the I'm Enough movement. And part of that is every day having children say I'm enough, I matter, I'm significant, I'm worthy, because our greatest problems as a therapist all come down to the same thing. People think they're not enough, they're not worthy enough, they're not good enough, they're not interesting enough. And so it's interesting that he always believed every child should be made to feel significant and important.
It's very nice. It's a lovely story, and I'm moving forward from there. And I picked up one of the data points, and that was 17,000 therapists that you have trained. Can you tell us a little bit about RTT, as you're the inventor, and how that movement is helping effectively to make a difference and change the world? So if you've got 17,000 people trained, the multiplier effect of that, the butterfly effect, as I call it, must be massive, so amazing.
It is massive. It's really nice. 2 years ago, I was going to bed and I saw that we've been up for an award for the most innovative thing in education, which is a challenge we started to put into schools. And I was in bed thinking, well, how many children is that? I was trying to count out how many children per class, per school, but I lost count, but it felt so nice. I thought, that's just the most amazing feeling, that I can impact a child. And I tell all the people I've trained, when you go to bed at night knowing that someone is having a better life because of the skill you possess, it's the best feeling in the world. And so RTT is therapy, but it's very different therapy. It does three things, and it does them all at the same time. It looks at what happened to you. It doesn't ask you to spend the whole session talking about what happened to you. It just looks at what happened to you, which is the past. Then it looks at why is what happened still affecting, which is the present. And then it changes it, which is the future. And a lot of therapy looks at what happens to you. And a lot of therapy tries to change. But we do all of it all at the same time, which is why it's rapid and transformational. And it's incredibly powerful.
You have changed a lot of people's lives doing RTT. What are the key messages, feedback that you get in terms of what created that shift? What moved them?
I think, a lot of people have this belief human beings are very fragile and they're very easily broken, and then we go through trauma and trauma stays in our body and things destroy us. But I've always thought the opposite. Human beings are incredibly resilient. They're amazingly powerful, and they have a huge bounce back factor. They don't always know that, because it's never what happens to you, it's how you feel about what happened to you. The event affects you, but the meaning you attach to the event affects you so much more. And we always have the power to change the meaning at any time. So I was talking to somebody once who said, I always remember my mother on my first day at school kind of pushed me in the classroom and just walked off because she didn't care. But actually, I thought the mother probably was crying, like many mothers do on the first day, and go push them in and just run away because they don't want you to see that they're crying. And so sometimes we just don't understand how easy it is to reframe. In RTT, the whole session is reframe, reframe, reframe. And it's really about empowering clients. So when you say, look, that happened, and any kid going through what you went through at 5 or 6 would have felt the way you felt, and indeed acted the way you acted. But now you're 46, you don't really have to act from that belief anymore. So the common beliefs are, I didn't have a dad, therefore I'm not lovable. We didn't come from wealth, therefore I'm never going to be successful. Nobody loved me, therefore I'm not worth anything. And we have to read from them. They say, well, just because you didn't have a dad, that doesn't mean you're not lovable. Some of the smartest people in the world didn't come from any kind of wealth at all. And the fact that you didn't appear to have love doesn't mean you're not lovable. But it's this unfinished business that, people I imagine with a rucksack on their backpack on their back, and they carry around all this old stuff that hurts them, wounds them, and holds them back. When, if your life was a massive clock, excuse me for 1 minute, if your life was a huge clock, your childhood is the first 6 minutes. We give so much attention the first 6, understandably, because it does shape you and influence you, and it does do a lot of things to you. However, we have the rest of our life to go back and reframe that.
So do you use some techniques, hypnosis, some other methodologies, or whatever, to get that reframe actually moving?
Yeah, we use hypnosis in the first part, which is when people come in, they'll explain things like, I was working with someone who told me that she couldn't stop shoplifting. And she had plenty of money, but she always had to steal things. And it caused her immense pain because she'd been caught several times. And she would do it with her children. And when she went back, she remembered her father taking her to a store and telling her to put on a coat and then walk out with it, but just in front of him, which she did. And he was obviously thrilled and praised. Then he would take her shopping in her store and he'd tap things and she'd have to put them in the stroller. And she was rewarded for that, but the rest of the time he pretty much ignored her. And so she'd totally forgotten that he only gave her attention when she was helping him steal stuff. And it wasn't just the coat for her, she'd have to do this regularly and then he'd sell it to somebody else. And so she began to understand, oh, as a child I was trained to, and I got praised for it. And all these years later my father is long dead, but I still need to get that thrill because it makes me feel I'm doing something good and earning love. So her brain had this belief that if you steal, you get love and praise, which isn't true. You often get arrested and it's hugely embarrassing.
Sure.
But the mind is so fascinating because the mind always goes back to what something means. So in hypnosis, you can say to someone, let's go back to where you learnt this, where this happened. And people go back instantly because the subconscious mind is always switched on. It's always on record. It never has a day when it runs out of batteries. And everything that's ever happened is stored in your subconscious mind. You can get access to it like that, or you can spend ages talking about it, trying to find out why. Another example, I worked with someone who could not stop smoking. She must have tried 10 different times, didn't work. And she remembered that her father would frequently hit the mother. Mother would lie on the floor and she would try and comfort. One day the mother would say, get me my cigarettes. And she'd have a cigarette and then the mother would get herself together. But one day she said, well, have one with me. So they sat on the floor smoking together. And then her mother died not long after that. And so this bonding with a cigarette was what she kept smoking to try and recreate that deep memory of being, so she was her mother's savior and protector. So we have things, but we have what the things mean. So someone might say, oh, you know, I love ice cream, or I love cookies with frosting on them, or I love hot chocolate because it reminds me of my dad, or I love that smell, it reminds me of my grandfather, or I love that music, it reminds me of. So the mind will always go back to what something means. And you can use it in hypnosis and go back instantly. And then when you find out what something means, well, then you get to change the meaning. You know, sure, when you're a kid, if you fall off your bike and you get an ice cream, it makes everything better. Of course it does. But at 55, it doesn't really.
Yeah. When people go through trauma in their lives, it could be an accident, it could be perhaps you know, a sexual event or something like that, and you go through life just literally suppressing it, and it comes out and manifests itself in different kinds of ways. Is that something that people can consciously block out, in the sense that I don't want to be promiscuous, but I am because I had an event in the past. Therefore, I'm being super promiscuous now because I can control a situation. At a conscious level, perhaps that person doesn't want to do it, but at a subconscious level, there's something in the background. Is that the kind of thing that you would unravel?
Oh, yeah, because many people will say that, you know, I don't want to shout at my kids, but I shout at them every night. I don't want to come home and eat a massive takeout, but I seem to do that. I don't want to drink, but every morning by 11 o'clock I'm drinking. So a lot of people will say that I don't want to do this. I don't want to lose my temper, eat far too much food and drink badly, but I'm powerless to stop. Because some part, and the powerless is interesting, because if ever you're doing something you don't want to do, your mind thinks, no, you don't want to do that. It's very useful for you. And the opposite, if you're not doing what you want to do, the same thing. So people might say, you know, I procrastinate all the time. I want to write a book, but I self-sabotage. I want to go for this interview, but I'm self-sabotaging and procrastinating. But you see, the very fact that these behaviors are coming because the mind thinks these behaviors are very good for you. If you procrastinate and never write that book, you can never be rejected. If you sabotage that job, they can never find out that you're rubbish and fire you. If you mess up that date, Nobody will ever marry you and find out that you're completely boring and not worth being with. So the mind's job is to protect you from pain, because that's how you survive on the planet. And people will come up with these interesting things that they do that they don't want to do. But years ago, they must have somehow had this belief, that will make me happy, that will comfort me, that will make me feel better. I'm dreading this exam. One of my clients told me that on the day of her exam, she put her hand on her mother's heating, what they call it, curling tongs, straighteners, and burnt her hand so she couldn't hold the pen, so she couldn't fail the exam. Someone else I knew put their hand through the greenhouse and cut their hand because they were so. Another of my clients said, as her father reversed the car, she put her foot straight under the wheel, didn't want to be a dancer anymore. But he wanted that for her so much. So we do have very powerful patterns of sabotage, but it's always the same thing. Find the pattern, understand the pattern, change the pattern. If you don't do the first bit, find the pattern, how can you understand it and how can you change it? Many people think, I'm trying to change the pattern, but I don't understand it. But when you understand the pattern, that can work a lot. But people say, I don't know why I drink, I still drink. You have to do all three. Find the pattern, understand the pattern, change the pattern, all three, all at the same time. And then the results are powerful and permanent.
Brilliant. This whole series that we're doing, Marisa, is Voices of the Future. So we're now projecting ourselves into the future. One key component of our future is technology. Technology is obviously an amazing enabler and can do wonderful things, but is also impacting us quite negatively. Young people are, through social media, being impacted, and self-worth is being impacted by so my view is that because of technology, because anything that can be digitized, it will be, and all of these people are making a lot of money because it'll be 1,000,000 times faster and 1,000,000 times cheaper, and they can be very successful. But anything and everything that cannot be digitized, like love, compassion, heart, soul, spirit, judgment, common sense, trust, ethics, all of these things cannot be digitized. They are within our human self. And to me, they become 10 times more valuable as far as the future is concerned. The future to me is not about technology. The future to me is about humanity and about these basic attributes that we have. From your experience, am I on the right track to believe that this is where our future is, in the more human elements of our lives, as opposed to just success through technology and other things of that nature?
Well, of course, people on their deathbed never say, I wish I'd made more money. I didn't eat enough chocolate. I should have had more fine wine. They always say, I wish I spent more time with my children. Wish I spent more time with my partner. Life is all about love. Love is everything. And we always want to grow in love, but we are sort of forgetting, but we're so busy now getting more. And in America, they call it excessive sickness, which is not that you're excessively sick, but you excessively want stuff. And we have got to a level where people are hugely about getting stuff to make them happy, because if I have that, I'll be happy. But then if you had that and it made you happy, why do you need more? If a phone made you happy, why do you need also a laptop and a computer and the latest one? If a pair of shoes made you happy, why do you need more? So we are taught at a very early age that things make us happy. And then when you're taught that, you start to look out there. What is out there to make me happy? But it's actually in here. We can't control out there. We can very much control in here. I worked with many people with OCD, and I found OCD is very easy. It's just I'm controlling out there because I can't control in here. I had somebody with that. She had it all her life, and in 1 hour, she's never had it since, because it was all about her crazy, chaotic childhood that she couldn't control. So she started to control not walking on the cracks and all the cushions being just so, and all the knives and forks being just so. So everything comes back to love. We always want to come back to love. And the thing that makes us happy, we know, is our relationships with people. Our relationships are the key to being happy. The more good friends you have, and like if you go to the Blue Zones, people live into their hundreds, they all have that thing. I belong to a community. I'm significant, that word again. I'm significant, I'm connected, I matter. From the minute we're born, we are hardwired to find connection and avoid rejection. And so the old way of belonging to a community, you lived in the place, and your grandmother lived up the road, your auntie might have lived across the street. If you lived in a tribe, you knew, but now we're not doing that. We're living on our own. Everything is delivered. You don't have to see a soul. You can press a button. Your groceries are left outside the door. Soon you'll get an Uber, but won't have a driver. You'll go to a bank. There's no teller. You don't need to go to stores. They all deliver. So we are actually creating massive disconnection, forgetting that we are hardwired to survive on the planet by finding connection, avoiding rejection. But today we're finding less and less. We're finding more disconnection and more rejection. As you say, you can go on a site and say, grade me, they go, you're a 2, or you're not even a 1. You know, maybe you were bullied as a kid and that was a terrible thing, but at 4 o'clock you went home and you had respite. Maybe for 15 or 16 hours. Now with phones, children can't escape from being bullied. Adults can't escape from being trolled. So we have, and it's very easy if you're an anonymous person. I mean, nobody would say the things that they say to their face that they say online. And that's a horrible thing, but we are moving too far away from connection, and we're moving much closer to rejection, and that's so bad for the human soul. You know, I see people who say, I was bullied when I was 11, I'm now 52, and it still affects me. I still can't walk into a restaurant on my own. I still have a job where I'm not visible. I don't want to be rejected ever again because the wound was so deep.
Yeah. Let's talk about the power of the mind, because that's something that is, how shall I say, it's energy around us that you are able to tap into to fulfill potential. And I think you even sort of utilize some techniques to use the power of your mind to heal yourself, the power of the mind to make more money. How does that connect? Am I misinterpreting it?
No, not at all. You know, I always like to simplify everything. I think one of the great things about RTT is it's simplified therapy. It's not turn up every Wednesday for several years and we'll talk. Let's make it simple. And the mind is very simple. You think a thought and your body works to make it real. After all, if you think of something sad, your eyes may fill up with tears. Think of something deeply embarrassing, you go bright red. Think of food and your stomach rumbles. We know that if you think about sex, especially for men, you'll get a very physical reaction. Every thought you think has a physical reaction and an emotional response. And of course, the biggest thing is in pharmacology. What you think about a drug will affect you more than what's in the drug. So we know that already. I think a thought, my body makes it real. But that's happening at every level. When you say, I knew that would go wrong. I knew I'd mess up. I knew I'd get sick. I knew I'd get ill the minute it was winter. I knew that would happen. So we have to remember your mind's job is to make your thoughts real, and your job is to think better thoughts. So the power of the mind is extraordinary when you think better thoughts. So, you know, here's a thought. I've got a terrible memory. I've got an amazing memory. If I look at a cake, I get fat. I've got a phenomenal metabolic rate. I'm no good. I'm amazing. I can't find love. I'm deeply lovable. We have to take responsibility for our thoughts and keep upgrading them all the time. Because people who are unhappy or stuck or lost, if you listen, they'll say things, well, that always goes wrong and that's never going to work out. And when you're around people who are very successful, they say, well, of course, how could that not work? Of course that was going to work. And so it sounds so simple because it is. Your mind is always making, I mean, when you think of something terrifying, say you're watching FBI file sitting in your home, totally safe, but you start to feel really scared. You're watching something scary. And so we know that if you're watching a terrifying film, you start to feel terror, even though you know that you're watching a picture of food, and you think, well, I need to eat that now. Yeah. I'm in the cinema, they've got popcorn, I need it. So we have to realize that this has worked our whole life. We think a thought, we make it real. But if only we could be taught, well, why not just think better thoughts all the time? Because you'll make them real. So for instance, with illnesses, of course, there are all kinds of illnesses, but 70% of people turning up at the doctor have illnesses not caused by diseased organs, they're caused by diseased thinking. That's actually very good news. We can change diseased thinking much quicker than changing diseased organs. And so it's a question of flipping it over. So saying, I've got, I remember in COVID, my friend's child said, I'm very scared of the granola virus, because he thought it lived in his box of granola and that everyone who ate granola was going to get this COVID. But of course, the opposite is to say, rather than going, I think there's this illness, and there's no defense, you know, but there is a defense. It's called your immune system.
Yes.
And happy people have a stronger immune system. Fulfilled people have a stronger immune system. We know that because if you give poison to someone who's lonely and sad, they'll get sick. If you give the same amount to someone who's madly in love and blissfully happy, nothing happens to them, because your immune system is always responding to your thoughts, your feelings. And so just thinking, I've got a great immune system. I've got a dependable immune system. What is that? Well, it's a thought that you're going to make real, because that's how it works anyway.
So the conversation that you're having in your head becomes the primary driver of everything.
Of course.
May I share something personal? I mean, I'm being open, vulnerable, and honest and authentic here. There were times in my life when I was super successful. Everything I touched turned into gold, and when you were saying that, I had a flashback, because it was almost as if I could walk on water, and whatever I started, whatever I engaged myself in, I knew it would be successful. And guess what? It was. More recently, over the last 5 or 10 years, a lot of my confidence has been eroded because of setbacks and et cetera, and it's almost as if I find it difficult to get back on the train. I mean, I feel as if I've been derailed, and I'm now using graphic images. So I'm off. I fell off the train. I'm trying to get back on the train, the success train, the development train, and so on. And I'm running, but I just somehow don't feel that I am fulfilling my potential. And
you just said, I'm trying to get back on the train. You see, the word trying implies failure.
That's right.
You say, I'm getting back on that train.
I'm getting
back on that train. I'm boarding it. I'm staying in first class. And I'm on the train. Because we've got to be very aware of subtle little things that we say. I'm trying, I'm hoping, I'm wishing, I'm dreaming. Whereas you go, no, I'm on it. I'm doing it. And of course, the definition of success is not, have you ever failed? It's how quickly did you come back? You've got to see it as like a big red rubber ball, the bounce back factor. I see that so much in success. It's not, have you had a bad day, a bad week, a bad year? It's how quickly can you come back? And if you have the bounce back factor, you'll do amazingly, because most people were successful had awful times. I mean, I was watching David Beckham's documentary about when he was absolutely hated and booed in the street and booed off the pitch. And what could he do? Keep going. You know that saying, Winston Churchill, when you're going through hell, keep going. And there's always a choice. Do I give up and go, this is so awful, this is terrible, fates are conspiring against me? Or I just say, you know, if I had it once, I can have it again. I see that a lot with relationships. People who've never had love tend to be the hard. People who've had love and got divorced go, but darling, you've got a template. Somebody was madly in love, they married you, it didn't last, but you can do that again. It's in you. Everything they said about you, all the letters they wrote, when they rang up just to hear your voice, they didn't pack that in their bag when they left and take it with them. It's still in you. You've been loved. You've had deep love. And you have it again, and you can have it again, because you have the template. And so it is with success. If you've made it, that template is in you, and you can go back and make it again and make it again. And look at people who've done so well, and then something's happened and it's all gone wrong, but they come back. It's when you've never made it, it's so much harder. But if you've made it, of course you can make it again.
Indeed. And interestingly, just to use positive wording in my brain, I say that I'm very good at bouncing back, but I actually say that I bounce forward, not back. And I keep moving forward because I'm very resilient, and I literally and even if I have a setback, I have made a conscious decision that I shall not let it last for more than one day. And I will find a way.
Because it's a choice.
It's a choice.
And if people don't understand that, how much we are, when people say, you know, I'm so lonely, I say, well, that is a bit of a choice. Connection is a choice. You can choose to walk down the street and say hello to people. You can choose to join clubs, or you can choose to say, I don't know why I don't have any friends. And the same thing, everything is a choice, and the way you talk about what happened is a choice, you know. the Queen Mother, obviously it's the Queen Mother now, said, "I'm so glad we got bombed. I thought I could look the East End in the eye after that." Isn't that a great choice that she reframed something?
Yeah.
People said, I'm actually glad I got sick because it taught me something.
Yeah.
I'm glad I lost everything because I realized I wasn't appreciated. And I came back and did it again. Or I had this business that didn't work out. And of course, you know Mo, who reframed his son dying in the most incredible way.
Yeah.
So reframing is a choice. We're not taught how to do it or why we should do it. If we were taught, this is how to reframe, and this is why. I'm so glad I came from such a dysfunctional family, because if I hadn't, I never would have been a therapist. I wouldn't have helped all those children. But I realized what it was like to feel not enough at such an early age, to feel not enough, to have everything but nothing, because it was all stuff. It wasn't real. I lived in a house that looked nice, but it was a house that was very unhappy. But I'm so glad I had that. The person who created Dr. Bernardo said, I'm so glad. So many people who've made it and are helping others will say it was my own adversity that sent me to do this. Roald Dahl, after his son got run over by a taxi, created this. I've even gotten what was an amazing medical aid for children who had got, was it water on the brain? We better cut this bit out. We'll do it again.
Yeah.
When Roald Dahl's son was run over by a taxi and had brain damage, he couldn't find something that would help his son. So he created it himself.
Yeah.
And he said, if his son had never died, if his son had never been injured like that, had a brain, he wouldn't have created it. And so often, that's what happens. For our own adversity, we create something bigger than ourselves.
Indeed. And you mentioned Mo, and I remember I went through that journey with him to some extent, because when his son died, I knew him well and closely. And that flip that he did into happiness, and the engineering of happiness and the science of happiness.
Sure.
For somebody who's just lost a 21-year-old son.
I know.
And that was truly inspirational. And I think he touched a lot of people's lives at that point in time.
I mean, Nigella Lawson, her father died, Nigella Lawson, her sister who she loved died of cancer. Her mother died of cancer. Then her husband, John Diamond, died of cancer. And she said, I choose happiness. I just choose to be happy. And I thought that was a remarkable thing, that people say, I'm choosing it. Because again, we don't realize that happiness is a choice. We can choose to think happy thoughts or negative thoughts. We can choose to give in, or we can choose to bounce back. And we're not really shown the power of choice we have. And it does come back to language. When I was told I could never have a baby, that I would never be able to get pregnant. And if I did, by some miracle, ever get pregnant, I could never carry a baby to full term. And if I did that, I could never have a normal baby. So I was told, you're never going to have a baby. Dr. Doe said, I've got 3, and believe me, it's not what it's cracked up to be. So just go off and have a life. But for me, I couldn't imagine having a life without a child. And when I did manage to get pregnant, and I was told all 3, this is not going to be viable, and everything's going to be wrong with the baby. And I had a perfect daughter, perfectly normal. She was 7.5 pounds. They said she'd be very underweight. I used that to create a program for women who couldn't conceive, because it's so much in the mind. After all, what is unexplained infertility? It says, I can't explain it. Ovaries are great, womb's great, partner's sperm, well, that's fantastic. We can't explain it. A lot of people have had babies. We don't want to say get pregnant, because that's a complete misdirect. Getting pregnant doesn't mean you'll ever have a child. Sure. And now I think, gosh, that's so lucky that I had to go through that experience of being told I was infertile, because so many babies have been born because of that. And I have a book called Trying to Get Pregnant and Succeeding, but I hate the word trying, it's a misdirect, but I had to call it that, because that's what everyone searches. People say, I've been trying for 10 years and I read that book and I was pregnant straight away. Or I've been trying, I came here 20 years ago to do, 18 years ago to do 2 fertility talks. And someone said, I've got 3 triplets. Sorry, not such a thing as 2 triplets.
Exactly.
When I came here, the first time I met you, I'd come here to do 2 fertility talks.
That's right,
And just recently, someone wrote to me and said, here are my triplets. They came about because of that talk. So many babies were born because of that talk.
Amazing.
So when your adversity can help someone else, or, Richard Branson called his company Virgin because of all the mistakes he made. So it's a good idea to write a book, which you're doing, and say, this happened, and What did I learn? How could I help you through my experience?
Indeed. And the part of the book which is really important is the end. And my story is about going into the future, and I'm still shaping that story. But it's a story about hope. Mm-hmm. It's a story about giving people that opportunity, and that's why it's so wonderful to talk to you, because you do give hope. You give people an opportunity to start thinking, reframing, redesigning their lives. And
there's no such thing as false hope either. Even if it's false, it gets you through a difficult time.
Yeah.
But, hope is a wonderful thing.
Indeed. And one of the people, one of the voices in the book, this guy's name is Sujit, and he's paralyzed T4, T5 bottom down. And he's now 30. And he had a motorcycle accident. And then he was in coma for many, many weeks. And then he recovered and he's found his way back. And now he's this energetic 30-year-old young man who's got his colostomy bag here. He drives his own car. He does his own thing. And he says, the only thing I do every single day is I go out there and give people hope.
Yeah.
And it is so inspirational because that's what it is. I mean, look at him.
Yeah.
And he's talking about hope. So your problems are much more.
I know my best friend got colon cancer when she was very young. I think she was like 14, and for her that was just such a devastating thing to have a colonoscopy bag. And she said, I remember lying in hospital. By then she was 18 or 19. And she'd given up hope, and somebody came to visit with a baby, and she had a colostomy, and she said, I remembered the baby and thought, somebody loves you, somebody's married you. And she said that visit from that woman changed her life. She was just lying in the bed thinking, who's ever going to want me? Life isn't worth living. And somebody came in with a baby and said, I've got the same one, and I'm very happily married. And that changed everything for her. It was a game changer because, and imagine if we can be that person giving someone hope, which is an amazing thing to do.
Indeed. You work with a lot of business people also. I mean, we've discussed families, we've discussed having babies, but when you're working with business people and you help unlock people's sort of limiting beliefs and so on, how do you do that? And how can they end up becoming more successful based on that?
Same thing, we go back to thoughts, and often it's the most simple thoughts, which is the father going, look at those rich people, they sold their soul to the devil, or you can't have everything, something's got to give. And so often we have parents who say things like, I can't find the money. Well, nobody finds money, they monetize a gift or a talent.
Yes.
Or they'll say things like, no, this isn't going to last, or nobody likes successful people. And so often people have these blocks because of what they've been taught. As a child, we learn what we live. We're taught certain things. Don't be greedy. If you have more, someone has less. And we say things like fat cat, rich bitch, filthy rich. We use these words.
Yes.
And they're not just words. They are words that deeply impact someone who says, I don't want to be a fat cat. I don't want people to think I'm filthy rich. And so often that's it, or the block is, I've got so far, it's greedy to go further, or if I have more, something bad will happen to me. And we think these are just throwaway expenses, but they're not. I worked with someone who was very successful, and then it all stopped. And she remembered her father lying on the sofa with his head and going, this job is killing me, this is going to be the death of me. And actually he did die shortly after that. And she formed a belief, when you're successful, it kills you. When you get a good job, the price you pay is your health, or maybe it's your family life. And that comes up to people who say, my dad became so successful and he left my mum and ran off with his secretary or somebody younger. And now as I get successful, I'm a bit worried that I'll do the same, or somebody will leave me. And we say this, when you're wealthy, you never know who your friends are. And so people have a fear of wealth, a fear of success, which is not unusual because we know that if you never touch a child, they don't like being held. They have attachment disorders. It's like picking up a feral cat. They don't go, how lovely, let me sit on your knee. They don't like it. It's unfamiliar. So our human brain is hardwired to resist anything unfamiliar and anything unknown, including love, including wealth, including success. And that must be true because 70% of lottery winners are bankrupt in 3 years. So therefore we know it's true. You can win $20 million and have got rid of all in 3 years. How could that be? Well, having money wasn't familiar. So what did I do? If I worked in a shop and got a salary and spent it all by the end of the week because it was just enough, when I get the lottery money, I'm going to do the same thing. And I don't know what investment. I've never heard of an investment. I only know about spending.
Yeah.
There was someone in England called Viv Nichols who won the lottery, and she said, I'm going to spend. And she did. She was utterly bankrupt within a couple of years. Bought businesses, never turned up, gave a lot of it away. And so we have to learn that the human brain is hardwired and super coded to go back to what's familiar, whether that's good or bad, helpful or hurtful, it will go back. Mm-hmm. And so we have to make good things familiar and negative things unfamiliar. So we have to say, I'm having money, not being ashamed of it. Or, one of my clients said that her grandmother used to come over and she'd get this money, she'd say, don't let anyone know you've got that. Your sisters won't like it. I only like you. She was her favorite. So she'd give her the money, hide it. They won't like you if they know. And she too had a block about having money because her grandmother told her every Saturday, don't let them know. Only you can have that. You're the favorite. But they won't like you if they know. They won't like you anymore. So she had a belief all her life, people don't like you if you have more money than them. And of course, she had a lot more money than them. It's so interesting how things pan out. I was doing a party at my house and this girl came in. She was the most amazing cook, Indian girl. And I said, this is incredible. And she said, I've had 2 restaurants. They both failed. And I don't know what's wrong. I cannot be successful. So now I just do catering. I don't make any money. And when I hypnotized, she went back to 2 scenes. The first is she used to go back to the village every year with her parents. And her mother said to her, give your doll to that little girl. Look, you've got everything, she's got nothing. But that doll was like her baby. She made her give it away. And the next year, she'd give her your dress. You don't need it. Give her your favorite dress. And she said, I thought a thought. If I have nothing, nobody can ever take it away from me again. Because it was deeply painful to have to keep giving her things away. They weren't things. They meant a lot to her. And her mother kept saying, no, you don't need them. Stop being greedy. You've got everything. Give it all away. And so she began to think a thought, which wasn't fleeting, it happened every year. So it becomes, now it's not a thought, it's an imprint. And the thought was, if I don't have anything, nobody can take it off me. And that's exactly why she couldn't succeed. And after we did that session, she got a restaurant. It's still very successful to this day. But our thoughts can propel us forwards or hold us back. We have blocking thoughts, limiting beliefs. And when we think a thought, it has a physical reaction and an emotional response. And if the thought is, if you have money, nobody will love you. If you have stuff, people will take it off you. You never know who your friends are. Then it becomes very difficult. I worked with someone who won the lottery, and he said, it was so horrible. First of all, I lived in a council, but I had to give that up because I wasn't allowed to keep it. So I bought a big mansion. Nobody liked me. I was this show-off on the hill. When I went back to my friends on the council estate, and we went to the pub, if I paid for the rounds, they go, stop showing off. If I didn't get my wallet out, they go, oh, have we got to pay? Didn't you just win all that money? He said, I could never get anything right. Yeah. And when I lost it all, he said, I was so happy. I went back to live there, and that's where I belong. But you see how his mind was going back to what was familiar, having nothing, and rejecting what was unfamiliar.
Indeed.
And so one of the best things we can do in life is to think, okay, what can I make familiar? Praise myself. Believe in myself, say I'm significant, I matter, I'm talented. What can make unfamiliar? Procrastination, self-doubt, and being hard on yourself.
As we come towards the end, 2, 3 final key points. One of them is that you mentioned that one of the things you want to do here, now that you're located in Dubai also, is to work with children.
Yeah.
What are your plans there, and how could we contribute to that?
Well, we've already had a lot of meetings with schools to talk about. We have a 5-day challenge that we give to schools completely free. And when they see what that 5 days does to a child's self-esteem, you see, a school's job is to raise a child's self-esteem. It's a parent's job too.
Yes.
But schools have never marked on that. Oh, let's grade this school. They're graded on exam results and academic progress. But what we're doing is saying, look, when you raise a child's self-esteem using our program, the academic progress goes up anyway. I found the schools here to be very interested in children's mental well-being, which is a wonderful thing.
Which is a wonderful thing, and I'm actually quite surprised. And it must be a very recent phenomenon.
Probably.
Because I didn't quite find that. It was more that a lot of people here living in Dubai are away from home. They want their kids to get the best grades and get into Oxford, Cambridge, Harvard, whatever. And literally the schools are geared to just getting grades.
Yeah.
And my friend, he has got 3 kids at a North London collegiate school, and their only promise is, we are the most successful people to get our children into Oxford or Cambridge. And guess what? He spent literally more than £150,000 a year for the kids, and 10 years later, whatever millions he spent on them. Two of them one is in Oxford, the other one is at Cambridge, and the third one doesn't want to do it. Wants to be an artist. So interestingly enough, he literally bought his way through. So that's what a lot of schools, and I get a little bit cynical about a lot of the schools here.
I think in the next 10 years, the whole education system will change dramatically. If you look at Scandinavia, children self-select their lessons. There's no more corporal punishment. People don't do detention now. They do meditation and they do mindfulness. And I think we're looking at a whole generation of children self-harming, being depressed, and go, well, where's this coming from? A lot of it is enormous pressure to perform, so they have performance anxiety. And I think schools are waking up to the fact that it doesn't matter how academically, what your academic progress is, if you're dying inside because you feel unlovable or unworthy. But anyway, so back to the schools here, they've been really, really receptive to it. Every school we've visited said, I want it, when can I have it? It's a work in progress, but by the next school term, we will have our program, our year program in so many schools.
So one of the beautiful voices in the book, her name is Raya Bidshahri. She has created something called the School of Humanity, which is really a school of the future. And she's a young neuroscientist. She's 27, 28 years old. Absolutely brilliant. And she started this program on Saturdays and weekends and online. Kids love her program more than the 5 days at school.
Of course.
Because they are learning about empathy, they're learning about projects, they're learning about their passions, they're learning about fulfilling their purpose, whatever their purpose is, and they're all working together. And I'll get the two of you together because I think Raya's experience and thinking is such that it'll fundamentally, I think there's a lot of collaborative opportunities in there. And that is really the beauty of Voices of the Future is, as I talk to people, I'm literally connecting the dots. And initially, the life of when the book started, it was everybody sort of saying, "Oh, media called me Voice of the Future," and I fell for my own bullshit. Like I'll write they're saying, "Why don't you write a book and create a brand for yourself called Voice of the Future?" By the end of chapter 1, Marisa, I said, "That's not me. I'm not self-absorbed, narcissistic, egoistic person, and it's all about my voice out there." What I felt and what my discovery was that, by just adding the letter S, it became Voices, and it exploded. The energy that it created, all my friends, all the people internationally and so on. And I think I found myself a purpose in the sense that I'm very good at connecting the dots. So I'm more the conductor of the orchestra. So all of you are brilliant, but I'm hoping to build some harmony and some synchronicity and some music and create this beautiful opera into the future. And that's how I'm visualizing the book as an opera of amazing voices. Literally the crescendo is building as we go into the future. One of my final questions is that let's both of us get into a little time machine and project ourselves to your 100th birthday. And how are we celebrating it? What have you done in the next year at halftime? So what are we doing all the way into your 100th birthday?
So I would definitely be looking back at how much I'd influenced education. I'd look back at the fact that RTT had indeed gone into schools and made a big difference. I'd look back at the fact that so many doctors would say, before I give you this pill, have you thought of this RTT?
Yes.
Before I give you a sleeping pill, an antidepressant, or whatever it is you want, a weight loss pill, let's get you. I'd like RTT to be the most successful therapy out there because I think it is. So I'd look back on my 100th birthday and think, isn't that nice? We all want to leave a legacy. I think, Wayne Dyer, who I loved, said something so profound. He said, don't die with your music still playing inside you. And that influenced me greatly because I thought, yes, everybody wants a legacy. We're not scared of dying per se. We're scared of dying having not done anything with our life, having not made a difference or made an impact.
That is so true.
I think I get to 100 and think, I did do something good with my life. Yeah. I created a brand new therapy as a woman, that wasn't really the done thing because all therapists were men. But I went out on a limb in a way, and I did something very different. I'm very proud of it. And I could look back and think, yeah, that was the right thing. But I always feel that was my destiny. You know, I think we often think I'm going over there, but actually we go over there, but then we end up over there anyway. And so everything I've done, including my own childhood, took me to where I was meant to be. I think when you get to where you're meant to be anyway, it's a nice feeling. And there's lots of setbacks along the way. There's lots of, you know, critics and drawbacks and things that don't work. But as I said before, you can bounce back and keep going and get to where you're meant to be. You look back and you won't fear dying because you think, no, I did what I was meant to do.
What a wonderful response. And if you were to leave, final question, a message in a bottle, and put it in a bottle and throw it in the sea, and we discover it in 5 or 10 years' time, what would that one-liner say?
Say I'm enough. It would definitely. That's my second movement. We have the I am enough movement. It would say I am enough.
I am enough. Okay.
If everyone only everyone believed that, we wouldn't have wars. We wouldn't have bullying. The world would be so much different. We could only know the truth that we are all enough, just the way we are. It doesn't mean we can't aim to be better, but we're enough.
Marisa, thank you very much for that sort of very philosophical and a very beautiful end. Thank you very much. I am enough, and I hope we can make it.
Sort of my bracelets say the same thing.
Incredible. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely grateful.